This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this next episode of Interview with a Lockpicker. Today's guest is Tarehjerne. Say hi.
Hello.
So, how and when did you get into locksport, and what was your journey like?
I got into locksport about in April in 2018. And I got into locksport, I should actually say, I've always been very interested in locks, even as a small child. And I got into locksport after discovering that picking a lock was really not as impossible as I would say modern influence makes it seem, in movies and stuff like that, where it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they're doing something with some bits of wire.
Yep.
And so I discovered what lockpicks were and how to get them, and I bought my first lockpick set, which was the Multipick Elite 17 or 18. I don't recall which one it was, 7
Okay.
or 18.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track.
And from there, I managed to open my first lock. It was the Trioving 508. It's the Trioving with the trampoline pins because we had one of those padlocks that I was able to practice on. And I would say from there, I sort of fell in love with the hobby. I thought it was a lot of fun. I still remember the first time I got a lock open. Uh, and it's an absolutely great feeling, especially in the beginning. And so I kept at it and got fairly good at it. I later then on went to join the lockpicking community, and it was a very welcoming community that really emphasized trying to get the hobby out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also very rewarding
Definitely.
when you managed to achieve things. People were very supportive, I would say.
Okay. By the way, where are you from?
I am from Norway.
Okay. Have you lived there in your entire life?
No, I have not. I used to live in Texas.
Okay. That's quite the transition.
Well, Norway, Texas, and then back to Norway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Texas in the U.S. My bad. Okay.
Close.
So, what do you do for a living?
I work as a design engineer in subsea.
Okay, can you explain about what that is?
Well, essentially, equipment that's used in the oil and gas industry on the bottom of the floor is usually designed by me. And I get a task from some other company, and from there on, I go ahead and design whatever it is that they need designing. Uh, and then that gets manufactured and put out to the customer, and then they use it and save money, I suppose.
Okay. So, when we spoke before, you talked a bit about your machine shop. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so I also have a machining firm, which I actually started before. I started working as a design engineer. I started machining when I was about 16, so and I
Wow.
made a little bit of money off of that. That's when I got my first lathe. It was the it was a green lathe. I posted a little bit about that. It was a lot of fun. From there on, I should actually say before the reason I got into machining was actually because of Locksport. So the big aha moment for me in Locksport when I discovered tool making. Of course, I started out with the basic pin and tumbler, as most people do, but then quickly I learned that if I want to actually get into any locks around here, I need to start making custom tools because a lot of locks around here are disc detainer locks,
Hmm.
Abloy, Anchor Loss, the Abus Plus. Those are all very very common locks around here, and uh, that's not because you're trying to pick everything around you. That's because that's the kind of locks that you would get if you were to go to say the hardware store and pick
Yeah,
up a
what's
lock.
available to you? Yeah.
Yeah, it would often be an Abler or a Trioving, and also sometimes you can go into a locksmith's and if you're friends with them at least, and ask if they have any locks that are stuck or do not have a key for and can't open, and usually they will give you something. And I've gotten quite a few things that way. A lot of ASA 700s, a lot of Trioving cylinders, even
Hmm.
some of the Trioving twin cylinders. The combi
Yep.
and the stuff with the sidebar DP, and also a lot of abloys. And and anchor loss. So anchor loss, well, my computer turned off. Okay. Did my audio cut off?
No, you're here.
Okay, cut that out. So the first distiller lock I opened was the anchor loss. That's actually also the first video on my channel, which is called Tarehjerne. And that was a very, very crudely crafted Chinese detainer pick. It was made with lead solder for electrical wire. It wasn't even a gun solder that's used for having some strength. No, it was for electrical components.
Okay.
And it barely held together. I mean, like that tool is, it's a miracle I got it open. But I soon learned that getting Chinese tools modified like that will only take you so far.
Yeah.
And so I then started making my own tools from modifying ejector pins and that green lathe, which I was, which I started talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, I went ahead and just started with raw stock, which was often silver steel or some other high carbon steel, of which then was tempered and quenched and all of that.
Okay. So you talk about machining and all that. Can you kind of elaborate a bit about, what is the machining process like? What's it, what's it involve a bit?
Yeah. So before you, so I should say machining is only a step in a project of creating a tool. So the first step is normally at least to decide what tool you want. Say
Yep.
that you want a tool for, oh, I
Design.
don't know. Yeah, say that you want a pick for the Ablo profile. Let's take that lock. It's a fairly common lock. From there on, you need to first and foremost decipher how does the lock operate, how does the key interact with the lock, and how can I create a tool that mimics the key to open the lock. That's a fairly intensive process in and out of itself, and not really something I will be able to explain because, well, it's a lot of variables. Not particularly with the Ablo profile, that's a fairly simple lock, but some other locks they can get quite complicated, as I'm sure that you're aware.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, from there, the first stuff starts off at the drawing board. I use a program. I first started with the program called Fusion 360, and then I moved on to Creo, and now I'm using Inventor. And that's just a bunch of CAD programs. I'm sure that a lot of other designers
Sure.
have used them as well.
To do your 3D rendering. Yep.
They do the 3D rendering, and you're also able to sort of interact with the lock in the software.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
instead of having to go through relentless prototyping, having to make something, prototype it, try and act the lock, and do like that, which is expensive and slow, you can just make a CAD model, and you can sort of see how the pick looks, how it interacts with the disk stack, if it's a disk detainer, usually is, and all of that. You can look for collisions and yeah,
So,
stuff like that.
how difficult is it to model a functioning lock in the CAD program to then design an actual tool to interact with it? That sounds fascinating to me that you can do that within the software.
Let's just say it's not difficult enough to where a 19-year-old can't manage it,
Huh.
but it is difficult enough to where you would work professionally with CAD modeling if you were able to do it.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So go ahead.
No, no, no.
Very fascinated by this.
So after you have the design, the next step is going to be then the machining. Well, after you've picked up your stock and all of that. I usually use silver steel because it has a fairly high yield strength and it's also very springy if you quench it correctly. So that's a very good material overall for picks. That's what most of my picks are made from. It's also fairly cheap. And from there, it's machining. Now, my first machine was a lathe, which for a lot of lock tools that I work with, they're usually round. Like they have a lot of very round features. And from there, you can either use a file or a bench grinder, which is what I started out with, to make the non-round features. Eventually, I got a milling machine. So in basic machining, lathe handled the round stuff and mills handled the round stuff. That's just sort of the the very basics of it.
Okay.
Uh, And so then I got a milling machine. It was a cheap Chinese milling machine, but it did actually spin an end mill and managed to remove some metal, which greatly increased the precision of my work as well as the productivity. From there on, uh, I actually had my first ever sale of a pick. It wasn't a very good pick, and this was also before I had the lathe. I should know this. Uh, I should note this
Sure.
English, uh, and uh, and that sort of got me going. So I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I can actually manage to repay some of the machines by selling some of these picks, because these machines are not cheap by
Yeah,
any
I would
means,
imagine.
especially not for me at that time. And that kind of got me going. So sold a few picks, bought some more tools, sold some more picks, got a new machine, and then eventually I started doing more work for other industries, such as the subsea industry, which is I should just say this: Norway, at least the city I'm in here, is like the world capital of subsea. It's by far it's sort of like Silicon Valley is the world capital of IT. Then
Okay.
here it's subsea. So
Yep.
most of the parts that are in the oil and gas industry at the bottom of the ocean are designed, at least designed in Norway, and most of them are also made in Norway. So that's like by far the biggest export Norway has. And so I started doing a little bit about that, which is, I would say, actually easier to get into than the pick making. Uh, but then also pick making started to take off. So I started partnering with other companies, and we have been then developing tools, and a lot of them are in the process of being launched actually. So I would say in the near spring this year, you're going to see a new tool that's probably going to be a big game changer. I would say that. I can't spoil too much about it. I've probably said more than I already should, but I'm
Okay.
looking very much forward to getting that thing on the market.
Okay, great.
I also do have some of my own products, which I suppose you will introduce now.
Yeah, go ahead. So, let me do a little bit of an introduction, though. So, I discovered you as a tool manufacturer. In my journey, I have difficulties with my hands, so multi picks Elite G Pro dimple pick set was one of the, not, I wouldn't say it was the first dimple pick set I ever acquired, but it was definitely the most expensive one. I love the feel and the finish on the set and the flags, but the handles themselves I found to be difficult for me to use for a very long period, for any real length of time, 2 or 3 minutes, and my hands were already fatigued. And I began my search for something that I could do to replace or do something with the handles. And I had originally come across bare bones covers, and just for my own reasons, those didn't work out for me. And I happened to be in the forums, and somebody mentioned your name and mentioned your handles with the compartments. And I talked to you very briefly and purchased a couple from you, and I have loved those things ever since. So, how did those come to be? Because they're I frankly I think those are awesome for dimple pick handles. To be honest.
Thank you so much. That really does mean the world to me. All of them were made here in my shop by me. So the fact that some people actually like them, that really does mean a lot to me. Thank you a lot for saying that. How did they come to be? Well, I am of the believer that if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself.
Yep.
And I wanted some tools to pick a specific lock. I made them myself, and they worked really good for me so far. And then I want to get into dimple locks, and I also had the same experience as you. I have freezed my hands a little while ago, so they're kind of shaky for some reason ever since that. Uh, and I wanted some better dimple picks that were a little bit easier to grip. They had a little bit more friction. They
Yeah.
also were able to fit the multi-pick tip inserts, because I'm gonna put myself on the line here and say that they are the best pick inserts by a pretty fair margin. I would say that.
Hmm.
So they would also fit those. Additionally, I do not like having. I know a lot of people have those dimple pick sets
Yes.
or just a general pick set. If they're, I don't know, doing something, maybe you're going outside and you want to bring along your picks. I'm not really sure why, but I didn't want another pick set. I, I didn't want something a lot, having to carry two
Yeah.
sets, two types of locks, right? And so I thought, wouldn't it be nice if you were able to have, say, four tips that you can change in between
Hmm.
in one handle? So you can carry two handles. You have 8 different profiles. You can just swap around with them, and also have two of them that say that you're picking one lock and you want one type of flag and then another type of flag for that lock. Then this would work really well. And so I thought, well, it's you have a lot of dead space in these handles.
Yeah.
Why not just drill a hole through them and put a little thumb screw at the end, and there you go. That's a little storage compartment. And a lot of people, I told some people what I was doing, and they were like, "Yeah, this is really cool. I want some of these." And so I launched them, and yeah, people seem to like them. You yourself also seem to like
I
them.
think they're great. Frankly, you can fit was it 3 or 4 tips if you go with
Or
4 inside the handle, and if you even have one that's in the handle, and you literally have 5 picks in one pick right there in your hand, you get 2 of those. And I did a right side flag pick handle and a left side pick handle, and literally it takes up 2 spots in a tool roll, so that you can have all the rest of your other picking tools all at your disposal in one roll, which is awesome.
So there were two types of handles that I started out with in the beginning. That was the handle with the compartment and the one without. And the one without what I felt was a little bit nicer in the hand because that round surface at the back. You have them both, I think, actually.
I,
Or
I,
maybe you don't.
no,
But
I have all the ones I have are with the compartments, which
okay.
I like. So
Well, I didn't quite like how the screw felt in the hand because of the way that I was picking. So I made another one that didn't have the compartment, and the back was just sort of rounded with a big spherical back, as I would say. And I then launched both of them, but by far, I would say the most popularity has been the one with the compartment uh, by a pretty good margin. I suppose that's maybe just me having some specific needs. But it's sometimes I try out new stuff and they don't they don't catch on. But I really
no,
liked
but that's what sparks innovation too. So
yeah, yeah. That is true. That is true.
you know, I'm exploring different things in lockpicking myself, and some things don't work out, but you learn something in the process, and I apply that to other things I do later on. So it all works out. It's all knowledge.
It's all knowledge. Yeah, that's one thing you can never lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowledge.
I mean, in pick making, I've learned a lot of things that I don't want to replicate again. so, so how is what does the future look like for? I mean, you mentioned something about a tool you're going to be coming out with, and you can't really talk about that, and I
I
respect
can't
that.
really talk about it.
Yep, I respect that. Um, what does the future look like for what you're going to be doing going forward, other than this new tool that you're talking about, or not talking about?
Well, it's definitely not being talked about. It is in production as we speak.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be looking for
Uh,
that.
yeah. Uh, no. How does the future look like? So I am mainly. I started out my machining by primarily making picks, and I thought that was a lot of fun. However, since this is a limited market and these tools are definitely not getting any cheaper as you want to push up production and just expand your own technology and that sort of thing, I will definitely not only be doing picks, which I was also never just doing, but I will definitely continue making picks and tools and stuff like that as long as people enjoy using them. as long as people enjoy using them, I will never stop making them.
Oh, that's good to hear. So I want to ask one more question before we start to wrap up. So along your journey in getting into actually crafting tools and determining your designs and so forth, who or what would you say were your biggest influences in how you chose your designs? So maybe a who or a what.
So at the very start, I would say actually my biggest influencer so far in locksport was actually Bosnian Bill. I feel his videos were very, very informative,
Definitely.
especially with the pin tumblers, the guides he had on his channel. That really helped me get along in picking and actually getting stuff done at the very start. Which I will say actually, if I wasn't able to get stuff done in the start, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Okay. Any other?
After that,
Sorry, go
after
ahead.
that, uh, Matt Smith was a very big influence and help for me in my custom tool design. So, and then I started getting on board with more people, uh, which, well, there are quite a few of them, so I won't have time to name them all. But now I am in a very good spot where I have a lot of very knowledgeable people around me that I can talk to and uh, see their design. I can show them mine, uh, and we can sort of work together on creating the best possible tool because all of them have different experiences, right? I have my experience doing this and that, and they have their experience doing this and that. And so if we're able to put that together, then we have twice as much experience. And if we're even more people and we can all have a look at it, then you start creating very, very solid, usable designs that are
Hmm.
easy to manufacture. So they're cheap to produce. They also work pretty well. They're robust, and also really nice to use.
Okay.
So, but if I had to name two, I would say at the very start, Bosnian Bill, and then as I got more advanced, Matt Smith, who was also Huxley Pig on YouTube. You may have
Okay.
seen some of his videos.
One quick question before your is the APASEC website.
Also,
APAS,
like,
is that your website?
yes,
Okay, I'm going to be providing a link to that in the description for this video so people can find you a bit easier. So before we close, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience?
I would say to the Locksport community that it's by far one of, if not the best communities I've
Agreed.
been with so far in any hobby. So I've been in quite a few different hobbies, and none of them have really been as engaging as the Locksport community. And I think that is just absolutely awesome that we're able to have this. So I'm in a few of the Facebook groups
Yeah,
and Discord server, and well, yeah, it's absolutely awesome.
I agree
Well,
with
thank you
you
so much for that.
100%. 100%. This is one of the most amazing communities I've ever been involved in, and I've been involved in a lot of different hobbies. As my wife would say, you collect hobbies. So, um, all right. So I'm going to wrap up. I really want to thank you. This has been a great interview, and the stuff you're doing, in my mind, is some great stuff, fascinating stuff. And please, by all means, please continue doing what you do. So, with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. If you are currently a subscriber, thank you. If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications and all so that you can be made aware of new content like this and that you can be made aware of giveaways and the drawings for those giveaways when they're announced. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening.